Oh, okay.
Ask, good evening. This is the Charter Review Commission's public hearing for July 29th. I'm going to ask the clerk to take the roll.
I'll take the roll, starting with Barbara Marshman. Christina Johnson.
Here.
Elizabeth Monley. Ellie Matsumura. Enrico Callender. Frank Maitsky.
Here.
Garrick Percival.
Here.
George Sanchez. Hui Tran.
Here.
Jeremy Baruch.
Here.
Jose Posadas.
Here.
Lynn Dieppe.
Present.
Linda Lizotte. Luis Barrocio. Magnolia Siegel.
Present.
Maria Fuentes. Sammy Robledo.
Here.
Sherry Segura. T. Tran.
Present.
Veronica Amador.
Here.
Young Zhao.
Here.
And Frederick Ferrer. You have a quorum.
All right, I'm going to call this public hearing to order. We have 4 recommendations that are coming from a subcommittee that we will present those 4 recommendations and be able to get support or feedback or edits or suggestions, whatever public comment we will open up to. If you gave public comment on Monday at our commission meeting, you need not, unless you want to, repeat it tonight, but that is part of the record as well, so it will be considered. The letters, any letter that has been received to us will get to the commissioners after tonight, even if it got here today. We will definitely be able to see that. We don't vote on these, we have a provisional vote on these recommendations on August 9th, so all your letters are very timely and we would be able to review them as well. If you have other items that you want to testify to before the commission, you can do that as well. But we'd really like to get your feedback on these 4 particular recommendations. And this is the format we'll be following. When the subcommittees bring recommendations to us, we will have public testimony in our comment section and then our hearing, and then we will vote provisionally. In other words, we will say, yes, we want to continue and move this on, or no, we're not interested in moving it on at this time, because some of these recommendations will dovetail into each other. We won't take final votes till the end of the process, in which we'll determine what's going to be in the majority report and what might be in a minority report. So your testimony tonight from the public is super important to us. I appreciate my fellow commissioners being here and establishing quorum. And so I'm going to open up and we will just have the public speak during this time, and then I will close the public hearing. So at this point, I'm going to ask the clerk to call our first speaker.
Paul Soto.
I'm sorry, wait, I'm sorry.
I have a question. I have a question.
Paul, wait a second. I'm sorry, I jumped the gun. We're going to do the 4 recommendations first. So Lawrence, do you want to facilitate that?
Sure. Our first presentation is on the timing of mayoral elections, and that will be from Commissioner Garrick Percival. And so Garrick, you are free to take the mic.
Thank you,
we'll be, Garrick, just really quickly, sorry, apologies. We'll be hearing 4 presentations from 4 commissioners under the banner topic of voting in elections. After all of those 4 presentations are given, then we'll be turning it over to the public to give comment on all presentations. So bear with us, it'll probably be about 5 to 6 minutes per presentation, and then time for public comment as long as we have any. Garrick, please.
Thank you, Lawrence, and thank you, Fred, too. Do I have permission to share my screen? I do?
Should.
Okay. Looks like I do not. I can do this certainly without.
Megan, if you could just make sure. Oh, excuse me. Go ahead, Tony.
No, I'm saying we can do that, but Megan's really good at doing that.
I did it.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just give me one moment here and I will get this set up. All right. Are you able to see that? Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you to my fellow commissioners and to members of the public who are here to learn more about our proposals this evening. I'm just going to talk about the first one that we had a chance to introduce during Monday's commission meeting. And it's about moving San Jose's mayoral elections to presidential years. And I'll just start with, fundamentally asking what is the problem that we're trying to address with this proposal. And elections serve as the foundation to our democracy. It's through elections that people voice their preferences for what they want their government officials to address and to work on and to help hold elected officials accountable. And low voter turnout weakens really these core parts of our democracy. And in looking historically, at least our most relatively more recent elections, that San Jose generally we elect our mayors. It's the only elected at-large official in the city, also our most visible official. And these elections typically produce relatively low turnout or participation rates. On average, only 43.4% of registered voters in the city cast ballots for mayor over the last 4 electoral cycles, which means that over 50% of people who are registered to vote didn't participate. Low turnout might be more defensible if the voting public share the same policy preferences or have the same experiences with government as people who don't vote or vote far less often. And research in the social sciences suggests that this is not the case, that people who are more likely to vote, who are people who are more likely to be white, to have higher levels of education, higher levels of income, versus those who are less likely to vote, who are racial ethnic minorities, people who have lower incomes and less connection to government in many cases. And so low turnout thus indirectly skews our policy decisions by affecting not only who is elected, but also who our elected representatives feel most accountable to. So what this proposal does is seeks to amend the San Jose City Charter, Article 16, Section 1600, which deals with municipal elections. And San Jose mayoral elections would be moved to presidential years beginning in 2024 and would continue to be held every 4 years thereafter during the presidential cycle. And research or estimates, myself along with Dr. Terry Christensen and Dr. Curran Purcell, 2 colleagues of mine at San Jose State, are estimating that voter turnout would increase by about 30%, or about another 160,000 voters, by moving mayoral elections to presidential years. And by doing so, we'd be ensuring the candidates for mayor are competing for votes in an electorate that more closely reflects the city's actual racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic characteristics. And importantly, research suggests that no other policy change would contribute to a greater increase in voter turnout than moving the timing of mayoral elections. To help make this transition to presidential years, a candidate elected for mayor in the city in 2022 would serve a modified 2-year term that ends in 2024. And then all candidates, including the incumbent mayor that year, would be eligible to run for a regular 4-year term in 2024. So in sum, a candidate elected in 2022 would be eligible to serve an initial 2-year term, plus 2 additional or regular 4-year terms, one in 24 and one in 2028, if they were successfully reelected. So I also wanted to just spend a moment addressing some of the potential concerns that we've heard about this proposal. And the one concern is that moving the timing of mayoral elections to a presidential year is that local issues will get lost in the noise of a presidential contest. But research indicates that there's no evidence that voters become less informed about local issues in presidential contests. City elections are already competing for attention in gubernatorial years, where we currently hold our mayoral elections. There's governor's races. There's also high-profile statewide voter initiatives that can capture a lot of attention and drive a lot of controversy, a lot of those issues. And what we know is that voters rely on what political scientists often refer to as informational shortcuts that voters can use to capture more information to help them make more informed decisions without having to spend hours and hours researching the candidates and their policy positions. They'll often rely on, say, endorsements by an interest group that they trust, maybe an editorial in the paper, and a variety of other means to make informed choices. And then one other point that I wanted to bring up, because we heard it during our discussion Monday's session, is a concern about removing the mayor's race will harm turnout in city council elections. So if we remove the mayor's race, that we would have city council districts see their turnout be decreased without the mayor present. And here again, that research indicates that the presence of a mayor's race has no effect on voter turnout in city council district elections. And so I'll leave it at that, and I'll be happy to hear public comment on this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Personal. We are now going to go to Commissioner Hui Tran to share a proposed recommendation on ranked choice voting.
Thank you, Lawrence. I'm going to go ahead and try this video one more time.
All right.
With the with hopefully sound. Give me a second here. Okay, I'm going to share screen, share sound. Okay, hopefully this works. All right, please let me know if y'all hear anything. Okay, let me go ahead and just kind of go through the information with a little bit more detail here. So just to share some context about the proposal here is to adopt ranked choice voting. This would change the way that San Jose votes during elections for candidates. Now, of course, that means we should cover how we currently vote. Traditionally, as I'm sure most of us who have participated in elections are going to be very well aware of, we vote twice in a year, not counting any kind of special election. The first vote is during the primary, in which is going to be either March or June, depending on which year it is, and then on the general in November. If there are more than 2 candidates for any particular seat, the top 2 candidates, the top 2 vote getters in the primary will face off against each other only in the general election in November. What ranked choice voting would do is that it would consolidate these election periods so that we're only voting once, and that would be during the November general election. On your ballot, voters will rank the candidates that they like the most to those that they like the least. The candidates who don't meet a minimum threshold or have the least votes will be dropped from that. And the people who voted for those candidates will have that vote reallocated to their second preference. And this process continues until one candidate has secured the majority of the remaining votes. Now, the reasons to adopt our ranked choice voting is that it gives people more meaningful control over their choices. Oftentimes we hear about choosing the lesser of 2 evils. But with ranked choice voting, you can choose the candidate that best reflects your values, and then rank the candidates after that according to what your preferences are. This ranked choice voting also reduces costs for the candidates themselves. Candidates who run in races where there are a lot of candidates have to basically prepare to run twice, to make it into the runoff and then again in the general election. This increase in cost, not just in terms of money, but in terms of time, it creates a big barrier for people who could be good representatives, but don't necessarily have the ability or the time to commit to the kind of campaigns that we see running these days. Lastly, ranked choice voting has also been shown to promote civility. There are a lot of, the most recent data from July of this past summer shows that people who participate in ranked choice voting campaigns, the candidates, tend to moderate and control their tone a lot more because they want to court the voters for other candidates. If you want a voter to support you as their second or third choice, you don't want to alienate that voter base by going after aggressively or using only negative campaigning as a means to attack another candidate. Overall as well, jurisdictions that use ranked choice voting report higher levels of satisfaction among voters who have adopted and have gotten used to the system. Now, there are arguments against ranked choice voting. The top two in our research has shown that the first argument has been about accessibility. In transitioning to a new voting system, there's been concern that older voters or limited English proficiency speakers will be the most impacted. The second argument against ranked choice voting is what's known as non-monotonicity. And in its simplest terms, the argument here is that ranked choice voting creates the possibility that a candidate can actually lose an election by getting more votes, or lose an election by can win an election by getting less votes, or can lose an election by getting more. And we can go through these here specifically. Now, the issue of accessibility is very important. We want to create a system that is accessible to all and can be utilized by all the voters. But however, concerns with accessibility may be overstated. The most recent data available to us from from a 2020 ranked choice voting study showed that, this is a study of 1,000 Democratic primary voters, showed that 80% of the voters actually had no difficulty at all ranking candidates. Older voters actually expressed more concern that perhaps they would vote the wrong way, but actually turned out to vote more likely voted correctly than younger voters. And out of the 1,000 Democratic primary voters, 12% undervoted, meaning that they did not use all of the ranking options that they had. However, the available data suggests that this was actually an intentional decision, meaning that the voter just didn't want to support any of the other candidates at all, rather than a mistaken one. On the issue of non-monotonicity, the concern about, one of the concerns that has been raised is, hey, if there's a candidate who receives the most first preference votes but still loses, there's something inherently wrong about that. But the key issue here is not about whether a candidate gets the most first preference votes. It's about whether or not the candidate gets the most votes. So during a ranked choice voting election, if candidates are choosing their candidates and they rank them accordingly, and ultimately the candidate who prevails was the one who did not have the most first ranked choice votes, that is kind of irrelevant, right? Because at the end of the day, the voters have already said that they want a particular candidate to win. Having a lower rank among voter preferences does not entitle any other candidate to this seat. The specific, of course, this is a proposal that is still being considered. We would love to get feedback from the community and from the public about the perils and the privileges and the goods and the pros and the cons, of ranked choice voting. So any feedback tonight would be very much welcome. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Tran. We're now going to go to Commissioner Jose Posadas to give us a presentation on expanding the size of City Council.
Good evening, everybody. What we are aiming to do is put forward a proposal that starts the process, that starts the discussion, and that proposal is to expand the number of council districts to better represent the people of San Jose. To give you a little bit of a background, San Jose obviously has grown in population. I think we've all seen this during our time here in this beautiful city. San Jose originally was governed by a 7-member city council that was elected citywide. In 1978, the vote passed Measure F, which established the 11-member city council that we have today, and district elections for 10 of those council seats. Back in 1980, the population of San Jose was 629,442, with each council member representing approximately 63,000 residents. Today, each council member represents over 100,000 residents, almost double depending on what the final numbers will be on this 2020 census that is being looked at as we speak. Our city council through district elections now better reflects the demographics of our residents, but the increase in population, nearly double as I mentioned, has resulted in less meaningful representation of those residents in their respective districts. A smaller population per council district would allow each council member to better deal and interact with their constituents, respond better to cases that we probably are all also very familiar with in our respective neighborhoods. We are recommending a change in the number of council district seats. Specifically, we are requesting that the composition of the city council be more in line with the ratio that existed when Measure F was approved, and each council district represented fewer residents than is the case currently. In effect, this would increase the composition of the city council anywhere from 13 to 15 total council districts, an increase of 2 or 4 council seats. It is our position and belief that this change most likely would not be possible by 2020, but could be finalized mid-census decade, for example, by 2025. In closing, I would just like to add that other council districts, both in California and elsewhere, have been increased to better represent the population of those districts. Increasing district representation helps to promote the diversity of neighborhoods that are reflected on the city council and aids in representing the diversity of opinions, backgrounds, cultures, and experiences from various communities within our districts. The cost, as you can possibly imagine, and there will be costs, however, should not be the start nor the end of this conversation. Equity, representation, and diversity should be guiding our decisions, and we welcome your feedback on this proposal.
Thank you, Commissioner Posadas. We have one more presentation from Commissioner Samuel Robledo about the Board of Fair Campaign and Political Practices, elevating that board into a formal commission in the charter. Please, Commissioner Robledo.
Plus, there's some political practices we want to change. And this was submitted by Commissioner Tran, Monley, and Sanchez. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak this. So it said follow the money. Well, the campaign.
Excuse the interruption. I'm having a really hard time hearing you, and I just wanted to see if that's just me, or I think I see others kind of leaning in as well.
Yeah, Sammy, any chance you could speak a little closer to a microphone, or maybe just slide a little closer?
I can get.
Yeah, that's helpful. Even just a little bit closer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lean into it.
So they say follow the money. While a campaign can be won based on values and proposals, it also can unfortunately be clinched with effectively use of monetary resources. In recent years, mayor and city or council elections in San Jose have witnessed a gradual rise in the total campaign spending through political organizations. Over 1.8 million was spent on District 4 and District 6 San Jose City Council races in 2020. While political organizations are currently required to disclose their independent expenditures on Form 496, more can be done for the everyday San Josean to ensure that this information is quickly accessible and easily transparent through an interface designed to fit for a city located in Silicon Valley. The San Jose Board of Fair Campaign and Political Practices, formerly called Ethics Commission, is currently charged with monitoring compliance, investigating violations and allegations, and making recommendations on ethics policies. As of November 2020, the city charter highlights in detail 3 commissions: the Planning Commission, civil service commissions, and salary setting commissions. Election integrity is crucial towards ensuring a fair election cycle for candidates, volunteers, and voters. The responsibility is one which should not be taken lightly. While details of San Jose board and fair campaign and political practices are listed in the municipal code, it's currently omitted from the city charter. In San Jose, there is currently $600 contribution limit per person for a city council candidate and a $1,200 limit for mayor candidate. These rules are intended to level the playing field, but they've lagged as a result of political organizations turning to independent expenditures. This has continued to be increasing tug of war between businesses and labor groups in the city. We must look into evening the playing field by having contributions from individuals within the city matter more than they currently do. Nearly 2/3 of the American public believes there should be limits on the amount of money individuals and organizations can spend on political organizations. Much of the debate on increased disclosures centers on the Political Reform Act, which allows for payments expressly advocating support of or opposition to a candidate on ballot measures known as independent expenditures. Recent Supreme Court rulings have squashed methods in limiting independent expenditures. A handful of attempts have been made to lessen the impact made on monetary influence from special interests. Here are three examples. In the city of Seattle, they mail residents 4 $25 democracy vouchers to the residents, who then can assign it to any candidate participating in the program. The program is funded through a property tax costing voters $3 million per year. That's roughly $8 per year for an average homeowner. They're charged with administrative vouchers and Seattle Ethics and Election Commissions, who ultimately have 3 full-time employees managing the election infrastructures. In New York, which currently has a 6-to-1 match program for mayor and city council races. So for every dollar the candidate receives, New York matches it with 6 public dollars. In Los Angeles, currently there's a dual tiered match rate dependent on qualifications met by candidates. 1-to-1 for general primary candidates that meet the minimum criteria, and a 2-to-1 for the primary. There's also a 4-to-1 match candidate in generals who meet additional criteria. While San Jose is one of the most aggressive voting participation programs in the state, there are still those who feel disenfranchised for many reasons. The proposal aims to suggest solutions for those who are left out of the election process without design or neglect. These recommendations is intended to ensure that focus is placed on campaign finance and historical disenfranchisement. Regarding campaign finance, providing accessible disclosures of major independent expenditures on the main city of San Jose website should provide voters with additional information on which organizations align with respective candidates and help create more and more user-friendly site for folks to score through the material. Evaluating San Jose Board of Fair Campaign and Political Practices from the municipal code to the city charter is intended to signify importance of the board will have in ensuring mayor and city councilman candidates are following election rules. For example, in future elections, there may be more responsibility for the board to be in charge of administrating, which may have richer impasse with the city office. Creating a system which evaluates the weight and meaning of campaign contributions from San Joseans can help ensure the voices of community members are elevated in such a way to equal standing as efforts by political organizations. It can also contribute to more voter engagement and participation in council and mayor elections due to increased awareness. Regarding historical disenfranchisement, expanding the charge by the Board of Fair Campaign and Political Practices to examine this issue and provide recommendations such as outreach strategies and expenditure studying racism and bias for campaigns, literature promoting voting among young residents, and more can help to better understand issues and address it. So the first proposal is to elevate the San Jose Board of Fair Campaign and Political Practices from municipal code to the city charter, and create a new targeted responsibility for the board to oversee administering elections. This amendment would occur in Article 10 of the city charter. Related to campaign finance, the next proposal is to direct the city clerk's office or the appropriate entity, which is to revamp the city's webpage pertaining to council and mayor elections, including a spreadsheet or document highlighting independent expenditures supporting respective candidates, and which is to be maintained frequently. The finished product is intended to resemble sites currently maintained by City of San Francisco and City of San Diego. This amendment would occur in 12.0.21 of the San Jose Municipal Code. Proposal 3, implement a small donor matching fund system where the City of San Jose will match individual contributions for both mayor and city council elections at a ratio to be determined by the council and approved by the voters of San Jose. And this amendment would occur in 12.06.1010 of the San Jose Municipal Code. And last proposal related to historical disenfranchisement. Expand the charge of the Board of Fair Campaign and Political Practices to study and assess recommendations that address historical disenfranchisement, including but not limited to creating a budget for the support of outreach programs like Latino correlations in all districts throughout the city, setting policy for voting centers and drop-off boxes in equal proportions and distances in each district and throughout the city. And 3, set policy for reaching out to incarcerated teens in an effort to educate and guide them in the personal power. Is this feasible? Yes. The Board and Fair Campaign of Political Practices already exist in the municipal code. This proposal would elevate the board to a standing board under the charter with authority and scope of work to address campaign finance and historical disenfranchisement. Each venture towards amending campaign franchise rules in San Jose would not be the first in its kind. For cities in California, as well as other cities in the United States, have already led this charge. It's legally possible, but would require some overhauling and structured mechanisms currently in place, or even potentially there. Overall, the benefit of strengthening and expanding the scope of the board for fair campaign and political practices reaches all people and businesses in San Jose by creating a resident agency that can focus on campaign finance and historical disenfranchisement, 2 issues that directly impact quality and representation that the residents have in the city. There is no identical burden of elevating the board to a standing under the charter. Now, relating to campaign finance, immediate benefactors to those proposed changes would be San Joseans. For more information on who is contributing to a campaign or initiative, would strengthen the overall knowledge and familiarity of which direction the said campaign or initiative intends to proceed with governing the city. The implementation of a limit or individual campaign spending could incentivize more individuals from non-Caucasian backgrounds to participate in running for office, such as a significant factor in running for office that weighs heavily on minority candidates is the lack of capital or ability to raise funds. Unintended consequences of this change, chiefly the limit of individual spending, could be even more fewer candidates with minority backgrounds and candidates who decline a spending limit overwhelmingly winning their elections. Implementing such an amendment may backfire, or it could actually do little in promoting overall engagement. City staff will initially bear the weight, ensuring proposals are implemented accordingly. Now, relating to historical disenfranchisement, the benefits of these proposal actions and policies will be found in increased number of eligible voters returning, number of candidates for office, and likely increase because of access to and trust within the community. reaching out to neighborhoods and facilitators that traditionally low voter turnout, helping residents to register, to understand how a candidate and measures will affect them, offering rides to the polls should instill a sense of pride and justification to vote over the long term. The more voters who turn out all across all San Jose communities, the more increase in equity in the population. There's no identical arguments against elevating the board of fair campaign and political practices or to studying such ideas to address historical disadvantage. Relating to campaign finances, some potential arguments against providing additional information, additional disclosures, or independent expenditures. One, not having adequate resources currently to facilitate disclosures that are similar to those by San Francisco. And two, prevalence of bureaucratic oversight and burden of increased reporting. As for limiting expenditures on political organizations for the use of match funds or vouchers or full public financing arguments against the proposal will include how many implementation costs will outweigh what is ultimately distributed to participating candidates. Furthermore, there are concerns that candidates with fluent backgrounds may game the system. Simply opting out or partaking in public finance campaigns and using their personal resources, individuals could gain an economic advantage over those who participate due to different contribution types. Any proposal to public funding or campaigns may require an increase in city taxes or a decrease in public money allocated to provide existing services. People will have different views about the benefits and costs of using public money for campaign purposes.
Hey, Sammy, Commissioner Robledo, I'm just going to pause you right there. And we need to, we're hoping to do about 5 minutes for presentation.
This one had 4 proposals. That's why
yeah, I realize it's a long one. So
that's pretty close to the end of the presentation.
Okay.
But, there's only a couple more paragraphs to go. So,
okay.
Elevating the San Jose Board of Fair Campaign and Political Practices to officially listed commissions on the charter will require a revision of the charter. Additionally, expanding the scope of the board will also be a charter revision if it's elevated to standing under the charter. While accessible disclosure cities of San Francisco and San Diego have made concerted efforts in providing residents with much information pertaining to major candidates donors on the website. As for efforts in decreasing monetary influence on municipal elections, a handful of cities across the county have implemented some form of public election spending and or cap contributions. Cities such as LA have enacted forms of historical disintervention as well. But that concludes the presentation, and I thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Robledo. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Thank you to our commissioners for their reports from their subcommittees. We'll now go back to the public. And at this point, we're asking again that you respond to the 4 recommendations if you have something to say about them. And you also can, if you testified on Monday and you don't want to repeat yourself, that's okay because you're part of the public record already. But if you want to say something, change your additional comments, feel free. And you can address the commission on any item. Let's get started.
Put my microphone down, I forgot to grab it. The first speaker is Paul Soto.
My name is Paul Soto. I'm a 5th generation Sanjunero that is a son of a campesino from South Cipuedes. I have 15 ancestors buried at Oak Hill Cemetery, and I have 5 in Calvary Cemetery. I want to talk about process here. You gave 4 recommendations, and you're giving me 30 seconds per. Are you serious? Are you serious? Okay, these are very, very complex issues. Okay, we have literally what I've identified 20 billionaires investing money in the city. Okay, the city by 2035 has, in terms of its plan, 400,000 residents going to come here that are not indigenous to San Jose. They have no connection other than what they have built for them. What that means is the entire infrastructure that's being built here in the city is to accommodate people that aren't even here yet. That needs to be put on the table. When people start talking about disenfranchisement, we need to talk about redlining. I ain't heard redlining come out of nobody's mouth. I want to talk about redlining. I want to talk about the fact that you have Deb Davis that is going to run for mayor of this city, and she's going to run from the most redlined district. She's sitting on wealth that was predicated upon the suffering of my ancestors. Mine. I don't speak Spanish today because my mother was beaten and humiliated and degraded in San Jose Unified School District. And you think that these conversations that you're having right now are going to be legitimized without talking about that? No, you don't get to do that and then call this democracy. You don't get to do that and call this a legitimate process. You don't get to do that to the Chicanos that are the primary target group that are going to be gentrified out of this area using two processes. I suggest all of you do your homework. Number one is euthentics, EUTHE-NICS is a precursor to eugenics. That means good genes. That means you bring in a race of people and you wipe out the ones that were there pre-existing.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Roman Dawson.
Thank you, and thank you, commissioners, for your service. Since my time will be very limited, I'm going to start with my most important recommendation, which is the proposal to move San Jose mayoral elections from gubernatorial to presidential years. I've literally thought and talked about this for about 30 years. I'm not going to repeat Dr. Percival and others' arguments that they've made. I believe strongly that the time is now. I have heard for decades that the reason we should not make this move to increase turnout in our poor districts is because the mayoral election would get lost in the clutter of the presidential election. I just want to share with you that that does not match my anecdotal experience. I was a political fundraiser in the 1980s. All the way up until 1990. I've worked for 4 different members of San Jose City Council. Anecdotally, I believe that the mayoral race will receive more attention, better attention. And we used to worry about it not getting attention in print media. Well, social media is a game changer. So think about what you're saying with your vote and what you're saying about the priorities of this city. I urge you, plead with you, vote to move our mayoral election to coincide with presidential elections. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Brenda Doman. Brenda.
Hi, I'm a San Jose resident, and I'd like to speak about all 4 of the recommendations. First, I'd like to say that the recommendations that were presented tonight appear to me to be more like a marketing and sales presentation instead of a nonpartisan commission recommendation. And as far as the timing goes, I think there would be less focus on San Jose if you moved the elections to the gubernatorial cycle. I'd like to keep it as is. I also would like to not use ranked choice. I think it's too costly and complicated for voters, and it would take, 10 times as long just to vote. I do not want to expand the number of districts because that would also be more costly, and San Jose in general has a difficult time containing costs of all kinds. I am in favor of number 4, which was the fair campaign and political practices. That is definitely long overdue, and I hope that you do implement the recommendations in number 4. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Sandra, no last name. Sandra.
Thank you very much for your time, commissioners. I know that being on these committees can be challenging at times, even though I haven't served on them. I'm going to talk to 2 items. The first being the changing of the mayoral election. I am opposed to changing it. I also find it interesting that item 8 in your write-up that you say that there has been no actual study, formal study of turnout in the cities in California that have implemented that, but you're relying on research. If it hasn't been peer reviewed, I'm not considering it adequate. Second, I want to talk about the recommendation for ranked choice voting. Based on what happened in New York City recently, which resulted in at least 3 lawsuits on the ranked choice voting, I'm opposed to this as well. It would be possible for a candidate to win an election without winning the first place votes. I would rather go to a runoff than implement this. I also find it interesting that in your research that you quote that you only looked at Democratic Party people in your analysis. I'm not sure that this has been studied thoroughly, and I'm not sure it actually improves the situation. Again, thank you so much for your time and interest and serving on this committee and for listening to all members of the public.
Thank you. And next speaker.
Tony Romero.
Hi. Thank you, commissioners. My name is Tony Romero. I am a community organizer with Latinos United for a New America. And I am here to talk about the recommendation changing the election date for mayor to a presidential year. And we have seen how much San Jose has changed the past couple of years. Tech companies, developers have influenced the policies that affect the livelihoods of all of us. Rent is getting higher. A lot of people are being displaced. So I want a system where every person has the capacity and the support to vote. I want to see higher voter turnout to influence the policies that affect our livelihood. By timing the election around an election where communities of color, renters, women, and youth are underrepresented, the city risks putting in place a mayor who is less representative of these community members and a government less accountable to our city's real needs. This charter review commission should support the memo from Dr. Percival to place a charter amendment to move the mayoral election to presidential years in future elections. Thank you.
Rebecca,
Thank you. Next speaker.
Sorry, Rebecca Gallardo.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I'm a San Jose resident, and I wanted to speak in favor of the ranked choice voting proposal. In addition to the benefits that were presented before, the ranked choice voting has an effect. It makes it easier for underrepresented minorities to get candidates that represent them, because it diminishes the need for you to vote for the least path, or it diminishes the chances that a community's vote will be diluted when you have 2 candidates from the same minority, and then the vote gets split. So this is yet another reason that was not mentioned, just it is a boon to diversity in representation. And I would encourage the commission to also visit the website, fairvote.org, where you can find more information and research about this voting method. And please consider advancing this recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mariana Damian. Mariana.
Hello.
There you go.
Yeah. So I'm in District 1 resident, and I don't know why Chappie Jones invited me to this meeting. I think that I'm interested, and yes, I think that for the moving the president to the presidential year, the mayoral election is okay. I don't have enough information about the ranked choice voting. I'm saying no to increasing the district numbers, because probably you have wrong and old data. People from San Jose are leaving because they are very upset and very unhappy with the way that the city is managed. And the political, regarding the political organizations and monitoring the violations, I am pro. Now, let me tell you my biggest problem. It is without any public hearing like this one that you are putting together, on my street and on our neighborhood, Verizon is installed already the 5Gs that are very, very, very dangerous. We are very upset and very, we are thinking to sue personally the mayor and the city of San Jose managers for putting our lives in danger. I will appreciate if somebody will tell us what are the legal, not legal because we know the legal ones and we'll pursue them. What are the choices for San Jose, because we are not accepting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Blair Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks for the words of Paul Soto, who's, you know, there's 400,000 new people coming in from high income areas. The mayor's strong mayor ideas initially were trying to serve that. And I think we're finding out together, you know, all these questions today and our questions overall seem to be questions about our community and everyday people of the community and how they can have a more of a role in the future of the process. Thank you. I am for moving the mayor election, and I'm for campaign reform ideas. I'm hoping if we do change the election date that we can be considering campaign reform and the future of campaign reform. There's going to be a lot of money going around in 2024. How can we bring that down to acceptable levels where it's just, you know, individual persons running for office instead of large money machines? I think that's an important goal that we should work towards. And with 55 seconds left, I've been trying to make a point. I'm very alone in making this point, and I don't mean it to take political sides, but just try my best to offer the facts that I'm going through and understanding. There's a slight possibility we may have a very large earthquake in the year 2023. I don't know if that's correct or not, but you can make what to do with that information as you can. What do we do with that sort of information and decision making about the upcoming election of 2022 and how to move it? I don't know what else to say. I hope it can help yourselves in making decisions for the process. And I'm sorry if I'm incorrect in such information. We have to prepare for natural disasters in the future of voting, no matter. So I put that out there. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Krista.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Krista Delatorre, and I am speaking on behalf of the South Bay Labor Council in support of the Fair Elections Initiative. So beyond being a framework for our government structure, our city charter is a statement of our most basic values as the people of San Jose. Currently, our charter lacks a very integral piece, which is a strong and explicit commitment to equity, inclusion, and representation. And as the city, our people value principles that affirm the right of all to fully participate in the governance of our city. Additionally, one of our principal interests is that our city council prioritizes the needs of every single family. And as proven by the data presented to the commission, our current election system results in low voter turnout in mayoral elections currently. And low turnout consists mostly of older, wider, wealthier voters who are not representative of our city's diversity. Low turnout also gives undue power to corporate special interests. So moving the mayoral election to presidential years will create a fairer and more just voting system and help us achieve an electorate that looks more like that of San Jose than our current one, thanks to the increasingly active participation of Latinx and Black voters, tenants, women, and low-income voters. So commissioners, we appreciate the work you are doing and the very thoughtful policy recommendations that you are considering, and I encourage the Charter Review Commission to support the memo from Dr. Percival to place a charter amendment to move the mayoral election to presidential years and future elections. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And next speaker.
Brenda Zendejas.
Hi, my name is Brenda Sendejas. I am calling from District 5, Eastside San Jose. I just want to call in to give my support on yes to move the mayor from government election to presidential, and yes on ranked choice voting. I think that this will help voters get who we truly feel that is best. Instead of getting the lesser of two evils, voters can honestly vote for who they believe in and not lose their choices. I think many times as a voter, you vote, but you don't get who you have voted. But this will give us a chance to rank and to have 1, 2, 3 choices. I don't believe this is hard. I don't believe that this will be impossible. And I do believe that this will give the opportunity to truly elect who is the best candidate. We've seen it in other elections, and I would love to see in other cities too. I would love to see it here. I am yes to expand for city council districts and yes for fair campaign. I do want to say that even though, this is new and we haven't done it here, it's not impossible. I know that a lot of people can't oppose it because they've never seen it. Other states have done it, and yeah, everything's gonna have ups and downs, but I truly feel that this is the right choice for San Jose. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Steve Chesson.
Thank you, commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Steve Chesson. I'm co-president of Californians for Electoral Reform and a nationally recognized expert on ranked choice voting. I'm also a member of the Santa Clara County Citizens Advisory Commission on Elections, but I'm not speaking on behalf of that commission tonight. I am glad that the Charter Review Commission is considering recommending changing San Jose's elections from the current 2-round runoff format to ranked choice voting, and wholeheartedly support that change. Commissioner Tran's excellent presentation covered its advantages and addressed the criticisms, so I don't need to repeat them, except to say that the existing 2-round runoff system is also non-monotonic. I can also supply you with additional research that addresses some of the concerns expressed by some of the speakers. I do have some concerns about the proposed charter language that was contained in draft recommendation 2, in that it might not be compatible with the ranked choice voting software that the county currently has. While the intent of the description is clear, some of the details are problematic, and requiring the county to change its software to comply with those details could require expensive changes to the software, including the cost of certification, which could be passed on to the city. I'm sure everyone would want to avoid that. I'd be happy to work with Commissioner Tran and Commission staff to develop charter language similar to that used by Oakland, San Francisco, Berkeley, and San Leandro that is compatible with the software that the county has, so it would require no changes to that software. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Juan E.
Hi, my name is Juan Estrada. I'm a resident of San Jose. I live in East San Jose, and I'm only speaking tonight as a fellow community member, as a resident. And I am in favor of changing the mayoral election. I am in favor of ranked choice voting. I applaud all the work you're doing. It's clear you're doing a lot. I do want to encourage fellow community members to speak up tonight. Even if you spoke at a previous meeting, I think it's important that all voices be heard, and you may inspire fellow community members to voice their opinion as well. Thank you all. That's all.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Maria Marcelo.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Maria Marcelo, and I am community director for Healing Growth and a leader for 20 years of the community and I really support to working about that. Very important for that.
Hi, Maria. Maria, this is Tony Tabor, City Clerk. Your audio is breaking up. Can you start over?
Oh, yeah. and I community director of the Healing Group, and I leader for the community for 20 years in the Washington area. And I am a favor to working about with bots to change the days for the bots. It's important the whole community has the same chance to working together, not only for the bots on the for San Jose. It's important you to working about the mayor. So I am favor to that. And the other thing, I invite you guys to try to working on the community. Some people, all people know how communicated with bots. So maybe can make a groups and asking to the whole community about how he's wanna working on the change, because it's important the community is start involving on the projects for the county and the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
The next speaker is just Luna by itself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gabriel Manrique, community organizer for Luna, and I'm calling to support changing the election day for mayor to a presidential year, which could mean an electorate that looks more like the city of San Jose selecting our future mayor, thanks to greater representation of our working class, Latinx, and Black voters, tenants, women, and low-income voters. By changing the election day for mayor to a presidential year, we will see more voters come out and exercise their rights to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Michelle Mashburn.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I also sent this statement via email to the commission because I imagine I will be cut off before I state everything. I have some thoughts about the meeting tonight. As for the different proposals put forward, I do support ranked choice voting, as it will increase engagement overall and participation in our local government. And I also support publicly funding the elections as well as expanding the city council side. All of that said, sadly, people with disabilities are still disenfranchised and continue to be placed at great risk by the decisions of people like you on this commission in trying to represent San Jose without having adequate representation, training, and/or knowledge of the population of people with disabilities. Low voter turnout, yes, it weakens democracy. Disenfranchised harms democracy and harms underrepresented populations more. People with disabilities are estimated to be 20-25% of the population, and I understand the city of San Jose has a different demographic, and that is because of ableism. Ableism means you show a video with all sound of music with zero descriptions on what is being shown that does not meet the needs or represent people with disabilities or ensure they are going to be not disenfranchised from our government. You know, accessibility, including older and limited English speaking people, but not including any element of disability. You know, when you mention accessibility and don't include disability, there's a measure of equity in that needs to be considered. All of these things are important and need to be looked at because ableism is killing people like me and other disabled residents that represent all communities in San Jose. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Kevin Ma.
Evening again, commissioners. My name is Kevin Ma with the South Bay Progressive Alliance, and I'm calling in for support for all of the proposals given today. I will echo with Steve's concerns that we should make sure that for cost benefit that we do have a system that is valid with the county system. The county does have RCV enabled since 2019. So cost-wise, there's not really any change to our system except for the necessary need for a runoff election if need be. The idea that the first place in a plurality vote should always be the winner is inherently just a locked-in system of how the current way works. Fundamentally, elections, while they are semi-supposedly stable for legitimacy reasons, like sometimes you do get a situation where everyone's second place is better than the remaining first place winner. Like that should not just be assumed. And it is true that for most RCV elections, like if it was a current system, it would be fundamentally the same answer. Like for most of San Jose's elections, if you did get over 50%, you would get 50% in an RCV system with those same candidates. The question is what new candidates could appear and would be more representative of people. Smaller districts would be more representative people. Again, I spoke on on the last meeting that with too big of a district, there are certain communities that we always get diluted in the process. And we do need to make sure that cost is not the overriding concern with these things. Elections are fundamental where legitimacy is brought up by the populace, and any ways to shortchange that decrease the legitimacy and increase the distrust in the government, of which these past decades, since Watergate, basically, that legitimacy is important to make sure that, our system isn't constantly just locked on the threat of opposition from localized neighbors. That the city should be able to make innovative changes because we should learn from them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Sam Gordon.
Hi there, my name is Sam Gordon, born and raised here in San Jose. Thank you for your time, commissioners. I'm a volunteer with Californians for Electoral Reform. I support ranked choice voting, especially as a step to proportional representation. We've talked a lot about making San Jose more equitable tonight, talked a lot about taking money out of politics. So I'll start with the point that over the past 2 election cycles, candidates who competed in a runoff in San Jose district elections raised an average of $88,000 after their primary. This has got to be a burden on candidates to lower income communities, especially given that contributors can give a second time for a second election cycle, benefiting anyone with a network of high dollar donors. Eliminating this extra campaign cycle would open the race for more candidates to run. On another point, here's some perspective on cost savings. Costs and savings from switching to ranked choice voting. I looked into other cities to see what we could maybe expect. Per election cycle, New York City has predicted that ranked choice voting will save around $11 to $13 million, about 9% of their average election budget. They also predict to save $2 million in private funds spent. Locally, San Francisco and Berkeley saw significant savings from adopting ranked choice voting. San Francisco saved over $3.7 million and Berkeley $759,000 following election cycles. San Jose is predicted to save less, but that is because in part they are better situated to switch to ranked choice voting. Our county already is invested in the infrastructure that's designed for ranked choice voting and allows voters to rank up to 10 candidates, which alleviates any fear for unforced voter fatigue. We do need a very strong voter education program. So at the end here, I'll just put that bug in the ear that I think that's a very strong component. Even if we have these short-term transitionary expenses, they will expire and ranked choice voting will be left with an ongoing cost savings. Money that could go to a future program like public matching funds programs, perhaps. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Zakia Cooper.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but we're hearing a lot of background noise. Do you have a TV on in the background? Zakia?
Sorry, I'm not. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So, sorry about that. My name is Zakia Cooper. I'm a student at Santa Clara University, and I'm also an intern at the African American Community Service Agency. We encourage the council to vote yes in these elections, especially for mayor from governor's election year to presidential election year, because it would increase voter turnout for people of color, get more people engaged, and it would make it easier to vote so that the elections would be more inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Roland?
Thank you and a good evening. On ranked choice voting, I sent you all a letter about 2 failed attempts to essentially influence elections in San Francisco and 1 successful attempt in Oakland, which resulted in the mayor getting elected with 24% of the votes in the first round. She did not get reelected. The question here is whether you want to put cost over democracy or you're going to allow people to rig elections. But what I'd like to do this evening is to introduce an alternative that would increase participation, by minorities in the way we govern San Jose, but not by increasing the number of city councils. It's to follow London's example. And the way it's done in London is that they've introduced 2 levels of governance. There's a greater London area, which I think 7 million people, but then they've got 33 Essentially, they are district councils, but they call them boroughs, spelled B-U-R-O-U-G-H. And the way this would work in San Jose is that each district would actually have its own mayor and also have a council at large, so you got various people from that particular district, and they all have council meetings and yada, yada, yada. And then the district mayor, at that point in time, would represent the district at the city of San Jose level. He would fulfill the exact same function as a city council member does. And I think one thing it would bring us is typically our city council members, disappear on some floor, on the 18th floor in City Hall. We never see them again. They would still be based in their districts, listening to their constituents every day, and then once a week go up to City Hall and give them, their 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hewad?
Hi, commissioners, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Hawad Hyder, resident of District 1, California Democratic Party delegate, and steering committee member with South Bay Progressive Alliance. I did speak on all 4 proposals on Monday, so I'm just back. I wanted to give a little bit more background about ranked choice voting specifically, and specifically why I think that voters will be satisfied with it. So I wanted to provide some examples. In New York City, in the most recent ranked choice voting election, some previous speakers had criticized the way this went, but an exit poll conducted by Edison Research found that 77% of voters preferred to continue using ranked choice voting. And in 2004, after San Francisco made their switch, 82% of voters polled preferred it to the prior system, first past the post. And similarly, 78% of voters with opinions in Burlington, Vermont, preferred ranked choice voting. That number is 89% in Tacoma Park, Maryland, 94% in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Voters reported they're feeling very satisfied or somewhat satisfied with their first RCV use in 2018. So when voters are using ranked choice voting, they feel a sense of empowerment, knowing that their vote is actually going to impact the outcome. And we can find this through lower income candidates or candidates from marginalized groups. So when we have wealthy people coming in and running for office, the primary is going to disenfranchise them because voters are going to feel like if they vote for that candidate, they're not going to make the runoff anyway. So runoffs are inherently with the top 2 system going to be unequitable. Ranked choice voting eliminates this. It allows voters to rank someone second in terms of eliminating the lesser of 2 evils complex of voting. Voters are satisfied with it. If it saves us money, saves candidates money, brings more diversity and inclusion, I think we should adopt it. And so I encourage the commission to do so. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Jeffrey Buchanan?
Members of the commission, my name is Jeffrey Buchanan with Working Partnerships USA. Would again like to encourage the commission to support the proposal from Dr. Percival. You've certainly heard the arguments. It's quite clear at this point of all the decisions before you. This is the one that the largest proportion of voters in our city have already weighed in on through certainly signing to try to put this on the ballot previously. So I hope that we can, regardless of the rest of the work before you, make sure that that change moves forward in terms of moving our mayoral elections. Also would just like to reiterate, there were comments made, I think, on Monday's hearing that in continuing to think about make quite a bit of sense. Certainly moving the Ethics Commission or what we choose to name it in the future onto the charter, ensuring that that committee has a structure that is has some security moving forward makes sense. But just as the commission has, for instance, chosen to separate decisions around campaign finance from the charter and make some recommendations for the municipal code, I think it really makes sense to think about trying to keep a firewall between those kinds of increasing voter engagement decisions and the kind of non-political nature optimally of the Ethics Commission. I think Mr. Brownstein on Monday, my colleague, made a pretty compelling point. And in thinking more about it, it just, I think I would encourage the commission to certainly consider recommendations
moving forward with the ideas of yes, how can the city move forward on increasing voter engagement in those areas, but perhaps separating that activity from the decision of that charter create.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Only in San Jose.
Evening, commissioners. It's Alina. I couldn't change my name. I'm here speaking as a resident in favor of all proposals. I did speak on Monday, so I'll keep this brief. I've heard a lot of comments about costs, and I would like to remind you that this was also tasked to you by council to consider additional measures and potential charter amendments as needed that will improve accountability, representation, and inclusion at San Jose City Hall, which I feel these proposals are exactly that, and they represent ideas submitted by your community members to increase equity and representation, meaning, yes, this is about investing equity into your community, especially the historically marginalized. And as San Jose residents, I feel like this is also an investment in yours and future generations. And I encourage you to vote yes in all 4 of these proposals. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Tammy Sell.
Hi, this is Tammy. I am a San Jose resident. And first of all, I just found out about this meeting last night through information on Nextdoor. So I think there should be better communication from this committee about these types of things that are city, where they're looking for public comments. And so number 1, the mayoral election would be best done during the non-presidential years. So the issues that are important to San Jose will not be lost in all the national issues. And my husband and I vote in every single election. So both elections have identical protocols with either the mail-in voting option or going to the poll. So I'm not sure why it's so difficult for people to turn out in one year and not in a different election year. Number 2, the ranked choice voting. I think we should not do ranked choice voting yet. It doesn't seem like it's quite right when one person who gets the most votes is not the winner in the end. So I don't understand how that's a good system. Number 3, I'm against adding city council districts. I think it will increase gerrymandering. And then number 4, I am in favor of number 4. I think the candidate will be more sincere if they have less money. Thank you so much for allowing.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Danny. Danny? Sorry, I accidentally muted you, Danny. You'll need to unmute again.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, so I'm Danny Garza, president of the Plata Arroyo Neighborhood Association. I just want to make 2 quick comments. I support the Ethics Commission change, and I support expanding the number of council districts. And I won't get into great detail because I imagine there's plenty of people behind me. Thank you.
The last speaker I have is Luna. Again, when the meeting started, I had 2 people with the name Luna. So I'm going to go ahead and call this Luna to see if it's the second one. If this is the same person who already spoke, you can only speak 1 time.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, and I apologize. We are sharing some accounts. My name is Vera Pelagio, and I am the Executive Director with Luna, Latinos United for a New America. And I already spoke on Monday, but I did want to come in again today and just mention again my support for the Fair Elections Initiative to move the mayoral election to presidential election years, to increase the voter participation for the Latinx and Black and people of color communities to turn out to vote. And I also want to support the ranked choice voting. I do want to mention that as part of Luna, we had some community members come to the meeting, but At the beginning of the meeting, there was no clear indication for people who are monolingual Spanish to turn in their interpretation. So I just want to make that recommendation that for future meetings that is stated so that our community members can hear the presentation from the beginning. Thank you.
There are no more hands up.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So on behalf of the commission, I want to thank all the members of the public who joined us tonight for all your thoughtful comments. All of these are part of the public record now, and they'll all be considered. If you have more comments to make, you certainly could put them in writing, and all commissioners will read all the letters that are sent to us. Some of them were sent today, so some of the commissioners have not read them all, but definitely we will get copies of everything. But feel free to, again, put anything else in writing that you want if you have more to say or more arguments that you wanted to make in terms of your feedback around these 4 proposals. The commission will vote on August 9th, which is a Monday night from 5:30 till hopefully 9:30. And so we will be taking provisional votes at that time of considering all of the public input, considering the districts that represent. We will be voting to, in a provisional way, move things forward. As I said, it's a provisional vote because as more recommendations come out, there may be those that are in conflict. And so we will continue to move things forward or not at this point in the provisional voting, and then we'll move to, in the end, what makes sense for all of the recommendations as we formulate the report back to the City Council. Our goal is to report back to the City Council in a report that is due in December. So if you want any information about the materials and the translated materials, please go to the City Clerk on the website, on the city's website, and receive materials at that time. I did want to make mention of, we did have a public comment on Monday that I just wanted to make sure and tonight again, I did ask staff to look at the disability issues around accessibility to our differently abled community. So we will hopefully have more to say about that when we come back in August in terms of what other steps we're taking to make sure that we're more accessible to the community that are ably different. And with that, I'm going to adjourn this public hearing and thank everyone for their service tonight and have a great weekend.